So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar. Today we are talking about from observational to operational, evolving information governance with AI. Very timely topic. Joining me is Sandy Serkis, who is Valora's co-founder and CEO. And my name is Jen Nelson. I'm the VP Strategic Solutions at Valora. Here's our webinar series this year. Here we are in July. We're about to switch up the back half of our webinar schedule for the rest of this year because we have some other great things to talk about. If you have missed anything that we've talked about this year, please head to our website. We have everything available for you on demand that you can watch the recording. You can download the slides. So if you'd like to catch up, I invite you to go check out the site. A little bit about Valora if you are new here. We offer an auto classification platform primarily used by records managers, IG teams, legal teams, IT teams, compliance teams for better information governance. It is an auto classification platform, again, that kind of automates the discovery, the identification, the classification, and ultimately the disposition of content, regardless of where it lives across the enterprise. And it brings not only different repositories into a single view, but helps bring those multiple IG use cases into a single view so that all of the IG umbrella use cases can be used and managed in one platform. So that's a little bit about us. When we ask you to register, we always ask you kind of who you are, where you're coming from, and what your interests are. And Sandy, if you want to go to the next slide, here we go. Lots of folks in records and information management, so welcome, you're in good company. And the second question we ask is, what are your challenges? And kind of very general records management across the board. And then the most popular one is usually, oh my God, everything, because it just encompasses everything from plain old boring file cleanup and rot to records management to AI readiness. And that's what we're going to talk about today is using AI and techniques in advancing information governance from observational to operational. Some housekeeping before we really get underway. We encourage you to ask questions as we go. We'll certainly have some minutes at the end for question and answer period, but we really encourage that interactivity. So if you've got questions, go ahead and put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll answer them as we go. After the webinar is ended, you will get a copy of the link to the recording and the slides as well for reference. So that'll show up in your inbox. If not today, then probably tomorrow. And of course, as always, we encourage your feedback. So either during the session, after the session, shoot us an email after the fact. We'd love your feedback and any other topics that would be of interest to you that you'd like us to cover. All right. So what are we talking about today? Today we're talking about that transition from what's historically been observational governance, let me tell you what you have, to operational governance. And what does that mean to operationalize governance, and how can AI and other tools help us in that evolution from kind of being the watcher and the keeper to being the doer and the overseer? So I will pass this over to Sandy. Again, I will look at chat and Q&A, so keep those coming in those windows, and let's get going.
Okay, great. So one of the big questions that I kept asking myself as we pulled this webinar together is, has information governance changed, because AI has come about, or because time has passed, or because we've matured, or have the expectations about information governance changed? And I will let you guys ponder this deep philosophical thought, but my takeaway was they've both changed. The actual practice, the industry has changed, but the expectations for sure have changed. So let's walk through that a little more closely. So unless you just arrived in this wonderful industry last week, this has probably been your trajectory too, to some degree. Once upon a time, it was all paper. Then electronic, email, just availability of desktop applications, things became electronic rather quickly. And so the kind of what information are we responsible and how do we handle it changed from paper to electronic, and it was really both for a long time. There's still paper out there. We're still
Mhm.
responsible for it. What started to happen was better tools. This notion of analytics or auto classification kind of came of age, having data visualization. Let me see a dashboard. All of this kind of, I'm now in sort of the 2016 zone, kind of helped us understand, okay, I'm beginning to get a sense for what we have, but that was about as far as we could take it. I kind of sort of know what we have. There weren't a lot of capabilities to deal with that. And not surprisingly, most IG professionals didn't necessarily have the authority to deal with that either. And those two things tend to evolve together, the capabilities of dealing and the responsibility and authority to do so. You're going to hear that theme over and over. So here we are in 2026 where AI is everywhere and kind of mucking up everything, because who's in charge exactly here? Is the AI in charge? Is some technical group in charge? Are we information governance in charge? And everybody's sort of oddly jockeying to kind of get their sort of viewpoint and their responsibilities across. So that has kind of literally unleashed this notion of operational execution, this sort of who's driving and what's happening. I don't think we've completely figured that out just yet, but that is the discussion of the moment. And like it or not, we're racing right into what it will look like in 2036, which is this notion of native governance. We're going to get into that. What does that mean when every piece of content, when every document, when every action is born IG aware? Okay, that is where we're going. So that is good. Let's take a quick step back. We'll click the wrong one. There we go. To what is observational governance? What do you mean, Valora, when you say we're moving from observational to operational? And observational is what we've been doing literally the last maybe 10, maybe more years, which is visibility, and in some cases even that's been kind of limited, but visibility without control, sort of like a here's what you have. And it reminds me, if you've ever taken a long car trip and you're driving along some rocky ridge and it says, caution, falling rock zone. And you're like, what do I do with that information? Do I keep driving? Do I wait for something to hit the top of the car and go, guess that was a falling rock. Thanks for the sign. Right? That's like not really helpful. And that is the mode that we've been kind of operating in. We've been operating in falling rock zone. We've been saying, hey, you have rock, it's over there. Hey, you have PII, it's over there. Hey, you have tons and tons of duplicates, and so, yes, and what do I do when it hits my car? So it's you can think of it as IG has really been in this kind of advisory role. And I say there's been an implicit contract because on the one hand, IG had enough to do, thank you very much, with its tiny budgets and limited staff. And to then first have to clean it up, it was kind of easier to say, hey, y'all, you got a problem. Go clean it up and call me when it's clean, right? That's what I mean by implicit contract. We'll just kind of sit in this advisory role and say, that's bad. You should clean that. Or we're going to have a cleanup day and you should come. That was about the extent of it. Now we're moving into operational governance. And what that really brings to the table is it's another layer on top of the observational piece that says, okay, we're actually going to fix it. Not tell you to fix it and hope you do. Either we're going to fix it for you or we're going to fix it with you. But one way or another, the problem is going to get fixed, and we're going to provide defensible evidence that we have done so in a proper fashion, in a legal fashion, according to policy, etc. This whole notion of defend your systems, defend your behavior has become very much part of the situation, whether you're operating under something like a SOC 2 or an ISO where you have to show your techniques, or you are responsible to certain types of regulations like know your customer, know your data. These are all part and parcel of you must have a defensible, repeatable process that actually deals with the data. So what is happening is that the scale of activity is growing, and we are kind of moving from what was historically more of a legal records kind of oriented around risk discussion, hey, this risk over here, to more of an actual operational scale. Where business transformation, CISO, IT, these are the folks that are now entering the discussion going, how are we going to do this on an enterprise scale across the board, across the world? And so the contract now is becoming, this is for IG's role, is to make sure that everything is kosher. And what I mean by that is, yes, the results are strong, but the process is also strong, it's repeatable, and it has a provable defensibility mechanism to it, and it is perpetual. It is ongoing. You will always be in compliance, not the day you do the cleanup, and then the next day you're out of compliance again. Not we're getting out of that situation. So Jen, I don't know, any questions so far, or just keep plowing
so far? No.
Okay.
No, I'll let you know.
Okay, great. So let's look at these side by side. So the neatest summary that I can say is that observational governance sees what's going on, but operational governance acts on it. And you can see the difference. There's still plenty of seeing that goes on in operational governance, but the buck does not stop there. It then takes that next step and says, we need to deal with this for better or for worse. And what that brings at the end of the day is, that's why I said at long last, IG is moving from that, boy, we really should do, fill in the blank. We really should clean out the rot. We really should get rid of stuff that's past retention. We really should, lift that legal hold. The matter settled 3 years ago. Whatever it is moving into this must do. And I'm going to give you lots of examples of that. What it does mean, IG folks who are out there, is that soft pass that kind of IG people have historically got because either you weren't taken seriously enough, or you didn't have the authority, or you just didn't, sometimes I hear this a lot, you didn't view it as your place to actually go ahead and remediate that data. Those days are ending. You're moving from just wanting to make you aware to, I'll take care of that for you. And the big driver of this, we're going to get into this in just a moment, is it's not just, oh, we should clean up our rot, we should classify our data just because it's, kind of good, clean living. It's because our AI tools are going to read them tomorrow if they're not already reading them today. That is becoming the big driver for this. So again, if you're just looking for sort of a simplistic way to think about this, observational governance kind of ends at a report, and operational governance ends at remediation, at a cleaned up, curated state of data. I'm just looking through my notes, make sure I didn't. I love this. So you can think of the goal of observational to inform you of risk, and the goal of operational is to reduce risk at scale, not onesie twosie, not a project, but across the board. Most IG programs today that people have in place are observational in nature. They tell the organization or whoever's asking what has happened to date. AI kind of forces a different model. It's faster, it's acting in real time, it's natively at scale. What do I mean by at scale? I mean operating across millions, maybe billions of files in split seconds. Things that are kind of manual in nature are definitively not at scale today, but things that are happening in a programmatic way, which is, of course, what AI is at its core, are happening at scale. That's what I mean when I use that phrase. So AI is operating at scale, it's in real time, it's native, and governance has historically kind of acted on a more manual scale. So if your governance is only observing and your systems are acting, then governance is no longer in control. It's just kind of operating over here in isolation. So to gain or maybe regain that control, we need to become stewards of the decision making, defining what is acceptable and what is not. And I don't just mean regarding, this document, what is acceptable is we retain it for 7 years. What I mean is, when is it sufficient to rely on AI? When is it not? When must the human enter the loop? When do we have to provide a specific basis for why we have this document? When can we, when is 80% good enough, but 20% error is okay because the stakes are low. That's what I mean by decision making and defining what is acceptable and what's not. To regain control, we need to put in guardrails and fail safes for when unsafe or unintended conditions occur. What happens when the AI hallucinates? What is supposed to occur? What is the workflow that should kick into gear automatically when that happens? So to really do this, we need to move beyond the static reports of what we have and into active removing risk remediation at all times. So yes, that means obviously, removing obsolete content, but it also means defining, monitoring, and intervening in behaviors and actions, particularly around AI. We're going to get into that in more detail in just a second. We are no longer just governing information. We are governing how decisions get made with that information by humans, by machines. And here's the scary thing. We've talked many times in this webinar series and out in the universe about agentic AI. I'm not going to spend a lot of time today, but the TLDR is agentic AI acts on its own autonomously. And so if we don't define how these systems behave, they will define it for us and for themselves. Case in point, OpenAI going rogue over the last weekend. Not really going to talk about that one too much on this webinar, but I will be, if you're going to be at InfoCon in a couple of weeks, I will be speaking about it then. Little teaser. All right. So this takes us into what we're loosely calling Information Governance 1.0 and 2.0, and that aligns with the observational operational. So observational was about knowing, operational is about doing, execution is that differentiator. But I also want to talk about why this happened. Okay, this did not happen in a vacuum. Did this not happen accidentally? This is a natural evolution of a lot of forces that were already in play. So nobody beat yourself up. I'm not saying observation was bad. Observation was great because prior to that, we had nothing. You would ask someone, so what kind of enterprise content do you have? And they'd be like, I don't know exactly. And you'd be shocked how often we still hear that. And we're like, there's tools that can help you with that. But basically, for a while, observation was sufficient. There was a smaller amount of data. There were fewer repositories. Human review was still kind of having its moment, kind of dealing with things as they cropped up, or when we could have time to do occasional cleanup, things like an annual retention kind of effort. Those made sense. They fit the bill in a lot of ways about what was possible with the head count and the resources available. It made sense for the scale of data, for the risk of data, and for the use of data at the time. That is no longer the case. Every one of those items has kind of exploded. The amount of data, the ways we use it, except for the budgets, those haven't really exploded, have they? But hopefully they've improved a little bit. And one of the things that we're seeing over here at Valora, I hope you are all seeing this, you can give me a thumbs up, thumbs down if you agree or disagree, is that IG is beginning to use budgets that would have historically been considered IT or information security or compliance or legal budgets, IG is able to kind of lean on those budgets to make sure that everything is kosher. So we are seeing IG tasks, IG purchases, things like, Valora software showing up in IT budgets or business transformation budgets as opposed to some sort of records management line item. That's a big shift that we have seen. Curious if you guys have seen that in your organizations or not. And I totally can't see if any of you are doing it, so Jen will have to report.
Yeah, I can't see it either. So
okay, there it is. But so today, right, nobody's talking in even terabytes anymore. It's petabytes, it's zettabytes, you name it. We don't sort of talk about, so, what are your 5 or 6 applications that have data? It's dozens and dozens, if you even know about all of them. And then you have AI spawning new content, literally. I did see that comment come through. Sorry, this is not going to happen. We have AI just literally spawning content faster than we can utter those words, let alone application, the agentic model of literally causing transactions and applications to be born instantly. So we used to be a little more frightened about things like litigation or privacy regulation. Those are still out there, are still impactful, but if you can believe I'm saying this, they are dwarfed by what's happening. So, the advisory role, while still important, it's clearly not enough. But I've circled AI because I want to come back to why is AI the game changer that, quite honestly, all of us in IG have been desperately waiting for, right? We kind of thought maybe litigation would make everybody wake up and go, Jane, we ought to get our content under control because we're spending too much money to go through document review and e-discovery. We're spending millions of dollars just to get down to 3 documents we need at trial. That made an impact. It didn't always move the needle. Then along came privacy regulation, and we were like, all right, for sure now, we have to clean up our data because we have all kinds of content that is sensitive information. It's floating out there in our file shares. And yeah, it moved the needle a little, but people were like, yeah, come and get me, regulator. And, maybe they got caught, maybe they didn't. Now here comes AI. I do think that AI seriously moves the needle past the point of no return, where if the threat of litigation, the threat of privacy noncompliance wasn't enough to move you to clean up your enterprise estate, AI is. Because AI sees it all, ingests it all, and it is basically impossible to unbake the cake once it has done that. So even if you 3 years from now clean up all your rot, the AI has already kind of ingested and internalized that, and it's become part of its systematic training and decision-making algorithms. So if you are full of rot in your data and it's going to learn from that, then it is going to be influenced by rot, inordinately influenced. If you have customer data, patient data, data from minors, data you shouldn't have, data of questionable basis, it's going to learn that, internalize that, and use that in its decision making. You can just kind of hear the risk compounding. Remember, this is generative AI. It is generating more information based on this faulty, flawed data ingestion or data analysis because we didn't clean up the information. So that's what we mean by AI operationalizes information, and why I think AI is the game changer. What I mean there is for IG to actually get its work done. Because AI didn't create operational governance, but AI removed the excuses for not dealing with it. It is now laid bare in front of all of us. So if you are looking for kind of the silver bullet, I think it has been shot.
Mhm.
Okay. So if you would like a really clever article that really reinforces this viewpoint, I have one for you. And it might be something that you want to hand to, your budgeting office or your CEO or your executive team to say, there are hard dollar reasons that we want to get our data under control and governed prior to really rolling out AI. I'm not talking about little, pilot experiments here and there. I mean the real deal. Because AI costs money to use. AI works via inference. I'm not going to get into a huge discussion about AI here, but basically inferencing is the compute cost that gets incurred every time a model generates a response. So every API call, every prompt, every 4 characters is usually like a click on the dollars meter for inference expense. So the messier your data, the more expensive your AI costs are. Everybody get that? That is a key takeaway today and in general here in latter half 2026. So there's kind of pure play ROI in getting your data house curated now and going forward. It has direct ramifications into the cost and efficiency of your AI. And that is what this article talks about. Everything that I'm mentioning so far, these are all manifestations of this same underlying shift, which is that information has moved from something that we just sort of manage periodically or project to project to something that must be governed continuously and operationally. Again, the main theme of this webinar. When you get this slide deck from Jen, this is actually a link to this document. You can see it on the bottom there. Excellent read, and I highly recommend it. And if you like that, I have 2 more from everybody's favorite, analysts, Gartner and McKinsey. But basically, Gartner is talking about this sort of notion of zero trust data governance. In other words, that means you cannot simply accept a document for what it says. You cannot accept something just because that's how we always did it. That all data needs proper curation. It needs to be classified. It needs to be monitored. It needs fail-safes. It needs review, etc. This whole notion of trust. As we use more and more AI all over the place, the level of trust in the authenticity, the reliability of the data keeps degrading. And so one of the ways to boost trust, to boost authenticity and kind of trustworthiness is to utilize tools like classification, like putting in governance, and making sure you track things like lineage. So that's what the Gartner article is, and here's the link for that. And the McKinsey article talks about AI success, and that at the very, very heart of AI success is this notion of data readiness and what that means. That AI can only scale properly if you have properly curated, governed data underneath, and that is a perpetual, ongoing task. Again, something Valora has been kind of preaching for a long time. Nice to see these big heavyweights, kind of preaching the same gospel. So if you too believe in that gospel, and I hope you do by the fact that you're here, here's some more fodder for you to take back, because what we hear over and over again is, I'm with you, Sandy, or I'm with you, Valora, but how do I convince everybody else? So we're trying to give you ammunition to go back to your organizations with. So here are 3 excellent articles. And both Gartner and McKinsey are literally all over this. I had to pick my favorite article from both of them, but there are hundreds. So these I thought were the 2 very best from both of them, but have at it. If you like this idea, which I'm going to be introducing momentarily, which is that governance is a control layer, this Gartner piece specifically speaks to that issue. And so this takes us, remember I said we were kind of moving from IG 1.0 to IG 2.0. You can think about that as 4 main pillars. The first is AI readiness, literally what we've just been talking about the last couple of slides, of being able to ensure that your organization's data is properly governed and is safe and healthy and appropriate for AI. We didn't really get into this on this webinar, but the webinar we did last month talked about what is the most appropriate data to serve to AI. That is also a piece of this discussion. We just lightly touched on it. We have touched on this before, I think a couple webinars ago, about using governance literally as a cost control mechanism so that AI becomes cost efficient and not this runaway cost that it is now, because no one is paying attention to what drives the cost of AI. And we can get into it. We have other webinars on this, Jen. I don't know if you want to point them to the specific webinars that talk about RAG and tokens and so on. I think it might have been one or two ago. We got into this in great detail. And then governance as trust, because the more that AI makes up its own answers, that's what generating is. It's just good at it, but it's certainly not foolproof. We all know that. The more the kind of like trust erodes, because where is this coming from? Who said this? Did it invent this? Is this the truth? And so governance adds a layer of truth, because one of the things that governance can do is say, this kind of notion of a snapshot in time that says, this was the state of the union on this day or at this time or in this circumstance. So that when someone down the line or later in time is looking at this, they have a reference point instead of just like, well, where did this come from and on what basis? And is that the most recent thinking or is that 30 years old thinking? Governance can properly, if it's done right, set those goalposts so that they are referenceable to either regulations, to citations, to points in time, and if you're really good, to explicit trustworthy sources. So what we ultimately come to is that governance becomes the operational data platform for AI. It is the sort of the key layer of the stack. In a couple of slides, I'm going to show you the stack, but it is the layer that ensures that the results are kosher, safe, appropriate, cost controlled, and accurate. Which, oops, wrong click, which takes us into this notion of governance by design, as opposed to governance by ad hoc or not at all. So setting up, and you guys are, you're all kind of, we're all sort of stumbling into this anyway, where we're setting up policies, procedures, tools that obey the notion of IG natively, not as an after effect, so that when somebody is writing an email or crafting a contract, or even if AI is doing it, it's already IG aware. This is that native bit of saying, oh, looks like what we're creating is a record here, and it sounds like record class blah. We'll go ahead and have it inherit those attributes. Okay, instead of having to wait and do that later, or have someone, God forbid, do that by hand. Or, oh, this appears to have PII natively. I should lock this down and give it sensitivity class blah, and I should locate it over there behind the XYZ firewall. Okay? Happening as the information is being created. Again, whether by a person or by AI itself. In order for that to happen, all of those policies, all of those guardrails have to already be in place before the next piece of content gets created. Not, you can do it after the fact, but then you have to go back and kind of reassess. That's sort of the state we're in now. Once we catch up to ourselves, then it will happen in real time. So these systems, and yes, Valora is one of them, both kind of understand content. Oh, I know what this is. This is an employee offer letter. So it contains PII, it contains sensitivity, it belongs to HR, it's an HR record for presumably someone that isn't going to be an active employee. And so it understands what the content is and the appropriate governance that goes with that at the moment it is created. So I don't know if there were any questions on that, but hopefully that is clear. So again, we're kind of moving from cleaning up the existing environment, eventually we'll catch up to ourselves, to controlling it as it happens. That's what we mean about IG as a control layer, moving from just advisory to literally being I always do this because I always have this metaphor in my head of chasing a toddler around the room and going like you can't ever leave my arms. That's how I view kind of IG, the control layer around, and everybody else, all the content, the AI, they're the toddler. Anyone who's had a child knows immediately what I'm talking about. So that takes us to the stack that I mentioned a minute ago. So now I want to kind of show where the different layers of the stack are. So there's still plenty of strategy. There's still plenty of thinking that IG people need to do. I might argue more thinking than we used to do, which is coming up with what is our policy, what is our decision making, what is acceptable, what's not, what are the thresholds, when should a human intervene, when should we kick this to a council for analysis. So that is what I mean by governance strategy. And I put in parens sometimes some tools that we know that kind of handle these things. Obviously, we're not affiliated with anyone other than Valora, but we all know what kind of some of these systems are. So that's sort of the governance strategy layer, which is what are we either required to do or what do we believe is the right thing to do given our circumstances, which very much includes AI running around our organization. Then we have this operational governance layer that we've been talking about this whole webinar, which is figure out what the heck we have, classify it, remediate it, keep everything curated, fresh, up to date, accurate, appropriate, cost controlled, etc. Yes, that is where Valora plays. Then layered on top of that, we have what I would call the content platforms, the place where most of this stuff lives, whether it's unstructured, which is most of what's actually written here in this orange box, or in structured systems, whether it's Workday or ERP or pick your structured system of choice, where the content actually lives. And then we have the consumers of that. This is where AI really enters the picture. It used to be, once upon a time, we, the humans, were the consumers of this, and we still are. But we go to sleep and take vacations and have other responsibilities. AI is, at scale 24/7. So AI is dwarfing our usage of this information, and it's why we need to have these other layers in place, or it's literally going to run amok. And so the various kind of AI consumers of this kind of require that the other three places kind of be organized and in control. And I want
Sandy, sorry,
yes,
Sandy, I was just going to add to that. Something that we heard and we've seen is when, not if, but when the AI kind of runs amok and we have to pull it back. Either it's been trained on bad data or it's kind of gone over on itself and it's training itself on things. You can go back to base. If you've got everything that's already organized and accounted for and classified, and we already know the appropriateness of the data, to be able to kind of start from scratch and start that AI initiative again, which we've seen in organizations. They've had to scrap everything and start again. I shouldn't say scrap everything, organize it, and then start again. That's that imperative layer, that the understanding, because it will always be there and it survives AI. So that's something that we've kind of heard the last few months that made a lot of sense.
Yes, that is an excellent point, Jen. And I think we're going to see more because those first forays of AI were really kind of the Wild West, and people just sort of threw open the lid to see what would happen. And now we're kind of like, whoa. Let's kind of call those dogs back. So again, there's a really good opportunity right now in kind of latter 2026 to grab the reins and get that curation, get that perpetual operational governance going while the whole AI universe sort of retools itself. And to their credit, the AI engines are starting to look for this. Mm-hmm. They want that data to be governed because they don't really want to be on the hook for, kind of rogue systems that produce bad results. What kind of business strategy is that? So they are in many ways asking for this to take place. And in a less kind way, looking to shift the risk back to all of you. It's your data. The problem, with the result is because your data stunk, not because our AI stinks. Okay, so you're going to start to hear that sort of pushback. They're not totally wrong. Where is the liability? I am hardly a liability attorney, but you could certainly make a strong argument that the liability might lie with the data on which the AI was trained. So think hard about that when you are going out there and saying to your clients or your patients, your constituents, yeah, everything's kosher here, top to bottom. We're good to go with our AI. Sure.
Yeah. I just realized I didn't have the chat window open, so my apologies. But Anne comments, I like the back to base approach. And how do you ensure that AI doesn't contaminate the base or alter files? And that's a great use case. And what we've done, what we've seen in the Valora side anyways, of where did this content come from? Is it human generated or is it AI generated? And then tagging it as such so that you don't have that kind of snake eating its tail of it ingesting its own content over and over and over again. So that's another kind of, I'll say, tag that you can put on your data. And I apologize. I'm seeing a question in here too, but I'm not sure when it was. We said it was. I can see it's at 125, but the question was, what about DSARs? And I apologize that I didn't see that because I'm not sure at what point that question was to reference, but it was about deleting data. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure the origin of the question. Maybe Anne, if you could give a little more to it, then we'll be happy to answer it.
Yeah, she was saying it was the part when we were talking about deleting data and actioning data. I'm assuming like the ability to then action.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
So one of the interesting issues is, what does it mean to delete data, right? Again, if you delete data, technically the source data is gone, but if you have already trained an AI system on that data, it's still aware of it. It's almost like, if I showed you a picture and said, oh, pretend you didn't see that.
Yeah.
Well, what do you do with that? What do you mean pretend I saw it? So the AI is like that. You can delete that information, especially upon request or demand, as a DSAR would be. But how do you then prove that your AI has also forgotten, right to be forgotten? How has the AI? Can you prove the AI has forgotten it? And I will tell you point blank, you cannot. You would have people like me or Anne or others on the stand showing you exactly how it was not forgotten, how you could retrieve that right back out of the AI, even though the document itself is long gone. And so what that should require is a retraining of the AI when the source documents or source content are removed, so that can't happen, that you can't trick the AI into providing data that is deleted. Yeah, sure it is. So there's a very rich kind of, I think, legal thing that's going to play out here, where people will claim, I got rid of the document, it was a right to be forgotten, I got rid of it all, but it was still in the AI, and that could be easily proven out. I think that you will find those organizations are still liable, that they failed their compliance and they would have to pay the fine. So I don't know if any of you are whistleblowers out there, but there's a fun one. Okay, moving on. I want to kind of stress this isn't about automation for automation's sake and just being like, hey, we're fully automated, therefore we're doing operational governance. That is not a fair statement, because operational governance does have an element of judgment and oversight and intervention. Those are the human pieces, right? This is not just going to be one AI talking to another AI and we all sit there and no longer have a job. That's just nonsense, okay? We have to make sure that these systems behave. And the very first way we do that is by defining what it means to behave, and then building in ways to monitor that they are behaving, to check reporting and make sure that they are behaving, and then, of course, intervening when they're not. There's no situation here, there should not be any situation here where there's no people in the equation. That is a recipe for disaster. So automation is a tool. It is not the be all end all. And I am a maker of automation systems, but believe me, I very much strongly believe that humans remain vital to the practice of information governance. Okay. And that takes us to, so what does the IG role, you're the director of IG, the director of RIM, whatever you call yourself, what does that look like with operational governance? And you are the leader, okay? You are, I don't love this, but I couldn't think of anything else. You are the information governor, where you are the one, you are essentially becoming the control architect, right? I said IG is a control layer. You are the architect of that layer. You are the adults in the room. And you have to be, because too many people in the room right now are, I'll use this term loosely, cowboys going, we AI can do everything. Woohoo, look at us go. You have to be the adult in the room and say, you're going to throw up if you do that. Don't do that. And so you're the ones that are kind of ensuring governance by design, by adding judgment, adding intervention, adding confidence thresholds. When is 95% confidence acceptable? When is that completely, totally unacceptable? And what you guys may have seen this slide from me before, but I still am going to just keep preaching this. I think the strongest thing you can do for your careers is to become the data guru. In other words, you be the one who knows what's in your data estate, who understands when to intervene, when not, how to intervene, how not, how to write a policy that an AI system is going to use, not the finance department, but an actual system is going to utilize. You be the one to manage the mess, clean up that outdated stuff, the stuff past retention, the stuff you shouldn't have had in the first place, let alone still have. You be the one to reduce all that error, which ultimately will reduce expense in AI. That should more than provide the budget and the basis for your existence.
That's one of my favorite images as well, because it is also the international symbol for talk to the hand.
I had not realized that, but yes. Basically, if I were going to kind of sum this up, I would say take advantage of AI doing the work, but you architect how it should behave. And that takes us to something I've been saying for a little while now. The human in the loop, okay? And I use the word intentional human intervention, okay? Where does the human need to be involved? With AI kind of in the mix, humans do not disappear, they move. They add control. So you supervise, you review, you approve, you combine elements of intelligence, human intelligence and automation, and you have feedback loops. You should always have humans at critical points. For example, you can tell AI to optimize something, but it doesn't know when, what's appropriate. It doesn't know what the kind of the downsides of optimizing that are. You do. That's what I mean by kind of adjudicate that ambiguity, provide explicit feedback. This is acceptable. This is not. This is where I'm going to override because it involves a minor, because it takes place in Germany and it has to be in paper, whatever it is. That is you using your knowledge and your skill and your experience to guide and protect that, right? That contain the toddler thing again. The other big thing that people are great at and that AI is terrible at is the black swan situation. So a black swan, if you're not familiar with that phrase, is a very, very unusual, unlikely situation that has catastrophic impact. So like a terrible tsunami or tornado or something, right? It's getting hit by lightning, right? It's sort of statistically very unlikely, but if it does hit, it's catastrophic. And because AI is moving at this kind of machine scale, it can encounter these things more quickly than humans would. It's just calculating, doing more much quicker. So even if it's a remote case, it could still happen more frequently. AI also tends to bang into the black swan cases because nobody has thought about them. You don't think about, when you go out for a bike ride, you don't think, what if I get hit by lightning today? You're not usually thinking that way. So that is, again, where the humans become incredibly valuable. If when a black swan situation hits, the human is better prepared to deal with that than the automation is. And I'll leave you with this thought, which is, if you cannot override the system because AI is just running over there and you're doing your IG thing over here, if you have no ability to override the system, then you don't control it. And I would argue with you, so then who does? And if the answer is nobody, that seems like a very unsafe, untenable, and foolish way of doing business. So this kind of takes us into, thank you, Jen, there's a beautiful slide, about the things that a typical IG person, how your role changes when AI is here, when we're talking about operational governance. What is really happening? You are defining those boundaries. Yes, you're creating the policy, but you're turning the policy into actual tools, into something. Finally, someone's going to read your policies. It's just not people. AI is going to read your policies and, so help me, behave accordingly. Okay? You are going to be the one that establishes those thresholds. What's good enough? What's not good enough? When do you override? When is this a black swan situation? You are going to be the one that monitors the feedback. Can we use this again? Is this appropriate for this purpose? Is this synthetic data that got generated by this AI, process usable? Should we discard it? Should we trust it? How much? When? And hopefully you are the one preserving lineage and trust, because right now, I was going to say most, but I'll say maybe half and half of the data out there was created by us humans, and therefore hopefully has some sort of authenticity and trust to it. The other half is being created by AI, questionable. That balance is changing rapidly. AI will dwarf the content that we ourselves have produced. And so lineage and trust are really going to degrade. And we are going to have to come up with techniques, and I would argue this is an information governance role, that can say, I trust this data. It is accurate. It is authoritative. Why? Well, it came from so-and-so, or I can track its lineage back to this process, and the AI has made it transparent to me, so I am okay with that. Or AI seemed to generate this out of whole cloth and went out over the internet. You got to be kidding. And NFW, we're not trusting this at all. All right, to be able to make that distinction. And then, of course, the purposeful intervention, go, oh, okay, hold it, stop AI. That's way wrong. I don't know where your algorithm went awry, but this is wrong, or this is inappropriate, or this is not the right source, result, calculation, report, whatever it is. Get in there and be able to intervene. If you don't define that intervention from the get-go, you may not be able to intervene later. It may just literally zoom past you. So as these are being designed, I highly recommend you purposely build in human intervention and have the AI stop itself when it hits these points. Not wait till after it's already happened and go, oh, I should have intervened there. That's a little bit too late. You have to be ahead of that. So, which of course leads us into, where are we going? We are going to information governance 3.0, when governance literally becomes infrastructure. So we're moving from advisory, which is a little bit yesterday, into operational, and operational builds on advisory. Now we're becoming operational, and infrastructure builds on operational. It's just literally operation at scale and in real time, instead of the kind of cleanup remediation mode that we're a little bit in, and I think we'll be in for the next maybe 2 to 3 years. But we will have caught up to ourselves by then. And so then we will be heading for IG as infrastructure, a continuous system completely invisible to users, where AI agents are doing the work in an IG infrastructure. And so I'll give you some examples of things that are like this right now. Antivirus is like this. It just runs on all your systems. You don't even see it. But it is part of the infrastructure. It used to be an app and you had to download it and install it and upgrade it. Now that's kind of done almost at the cloud layer and it's built in. You don't even think about it. So IG is going to become like this. IG 1.0 said, what do we know? IG 2.0 says now, what are we going to do about this? And the next generation, IG 3.0, will say, how do we ensure that every decision the enterprise makes is governed by design? That's IG 3.0. And my question to all of you out there is, will you lead this shift or react to it? Because that is not a technology question, that's a leadership one. Questions? Everybody going to kill me?
No, that was great, Sandy. Thank you. And then very, very timely content as we kind of move from 1.0 to 2.0. I don't see any questions here, but we'll leave this chat open for a little bit. If you do have questions, we'd love to hear them either in this chat. And now that I know where the Q&A and the chat differs, go click on that. Please feel free to enter as you will. As a reminder, either this afternoon or tomorrow morning, you will get a recording of this and the slides as well that you can use as a reference as you'd like. And if you'd like to have a further discussion or even just a brainstorming session on how would we and how do you start and how does this work and different ideas, we'd be happy to meet with you and just brainstorm a little bit, a little back and forth. So these are our email addresses here. There's Sandy's email and my email. Please let us know if we can help. And if there are no questions, lots of great info. Thanks, Daisy. If no other questions, then we'll see you next month at next month's webinar. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.